The dream that is Ben Simmons to Sacramento is dead, and the Kings continue their winning ways in preseason. Both Terence Davis and Davion Mitchell shining in Portland. You're going to hear from Davis and head coach Luke Walton on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off-season, preseason too. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January all the way through to December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member, Sacramento Kings media member for the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering the Kings, formerly with KHDK Sports Radio here in Sacramento, now with ABC 10 Television. And before we get started, I want to thank you for making Locked On Kings your first listen for Kings podcasts and sports podcasts in general today. And I have a second listen for you. You might not be a San Francisco Giants fan, but you need to be following this historic Giants versus Dodgers playoff series that is going on right now. Game 3 happened in LA last night. You need to hear about it. You can listen to the Locked On Giants podcast with Ben Kaspick. He'll give you all of the local coverage that you need. I know we have a ton of San Francisco Giants fans here in the Sacramento area, so make sure you make that your second listen, of course, after you're done tuning in to Locked On Kings. But man, we got so much to unpack, so much to talk about today. We're going to start talking about the latest with Ben Simmons. Then, of course, we have to talk about the great game for the Kings in Portland. Game 3 of the preseason going very, very well, despite some key members being out. And then you're going to hear from head coach Luke Walton and Terence Davis at the end of the podcast. But let's start with the latest from this Ben Simmons thing. And I actually didn't talk about this. I could have talked about it on Friday's Locked On Kings podcast, but I was talking about other things, had Jason Anderson on. I highly encourage you to go and listen to the conversation that I had with him on Friday's podcast if you didn't listen to that already. But we heard, I think it was a conversation, or maybe it was an article with David Aldridge, and maybe Sam Amick was involved in that article as well. But it talked about Ben Simmons and his willingness to come to Sacramento. And maybe this should have been a bigger deal to me than what I made it. Maybe I should have talked about it immediately on the Locked On Kings podcast, because it's not, I guess, too incredibly often that you hear a high-profile player like Ben Simmons say that he'd be willing to be traded out of a city and situation like Philadelphia and come to a city like Sacramento. But in reality, I wasn't too surprised by it. In fact, it proved to me that Ben Simmons and his camp, Rich Paul, they're smart, because I think Sacramento, and I've talked about this with James Ham many times before, Kings insider James Ham, this is a great landing destination for Ben Simmons. Sacramento should be one of those teams on his priority list. Now, he did say, or we did hear, it was reported at the beginning of this entire saga when Ben said that he was no longer going to go back to the 76ers. We did hear that he wanted to come to 3 of 4 California teams. And I think we all assumed that the Sacramento Kings were that 4th California team being left out. And maybe initially they were, but now we're hearing that Ben would not stand in the way or would not stop a trade to Sacramento. The Kings make a lot of sense for Ben Simmons in terms of his fit with the roster, him not having to be a primary scorer and in that primary star role like he has to be in Philadelphia for that team to be successful. Now, there's still, don't get me wrong, there would still be a ton of high expectations on the shoulders of Ben Simmons here in Sacramento. It's not like he's going to come and be a 3rd or 4th option on this team. I mean, he's immediately top 2, maybe even the best player on this team, although I think DeAaron Fox would have something to say about that. But Ben Simmons is not going to be the primary ball handler. That's DeAaron Fox. And I know there are questions about Ben Simmons and his ability to space the floor, but truth be told, I'm not worried about the offensive production of this team. I'm worried about the defense. And if Kings fans have been asking for a star caliber player that can help defensively and fit a need of this Kings team, Ben Simmons checks all those boxes. Plus, Ben is going from a high-profile city where it's become nothing but venom. Only garbage is spewed his way. Coming to Sacramento, where there's hope and optimism, and if he's able to be a part of a team that actually makes the playoffs, so make no mistake about it. If Ben Simmons is traded to the Sacramento Kings at any point this season, this team has to make the playoffs. They have to, and they would, in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying Ben is the difference between this team being an 11th seed and a 5th seed. Maybe eventually, but not short term. But Ben would be a difference maker, would immediately help this Kings team win. And I think Ben Simmons on this roster, assuming you're not getting rid of Fox and Halliburton in the deal, which we know the Kings aren't, or I shouldn't say we know, the Kings more than likely would not. I'm assuming that team is a 8th seed at worst. And maybe they're a play-in team that has the home court advantage. But now things have changed a little bit today, because it's been reported that Ben Simmons is in Philadelphia. Now, he's put his house up in Philly for sale, and we've heard over the last couple of weeks, like Ben has said, or his camp is saying, or whoever's talking for Ben is saying, Ben's not playing in Philadelphia anymore. Like, he hasn't reported to training camp. He refuses to play another game for the Philadelphia 76ers. Doesn't matter what Joel Embiid has tried to do. Doesn't matter what Doc Rivers has tried to do. Doesn't matter what anybody from the Philadelphia 76ers organization has tried to do. Ben Simmons is not playing for Philly anymore. Except now he's in Philadelphia. And according to Adrian Wojnarowski, he's getting a COVID test so that he could return to team activities. Now, it's also been reported by Woj that he still doesn't plan on suiting up and actually playing for the 76ers. So really, and I understand there's a lot of Ben Simmons fatigue now going around, not just in the NBA, but in Sacramento. Fans like, okay, I don't want to hear about anything Ben Simmons unless it's actually something of substance, because it's really just been nonsense and nothing for the past month, right? But it sounds like Ben Simmons is relaxing a little bit. And it's been reported that conversations between the 76ers and Rich Paul, who is Simmons' agent and management, those conversations have progressed. Do I think Ben Simmons is going to play another game for the Philadelphia 76ers? I don't know. I don't know whether or not this entire thing is a bluff. I mean, we just saw in the NFL world somewhat of a similar thing by Aaron Rodgers. The only difference is Aaron Rodgers is an MVP quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, and Ben Simmons is a talented basketball player who completely flamed out in the playoffs. I don't think that Ben Simmons to Sacramento is dead necessarily, but it hasn't progressed. And I wouldn't say it's really regressed either. The Kings and 76ers are kind of at a standstill here, and they've been at that in a long time. Like, there was a recent report that came out, I can't remember who reported it, of the amount of the list of teams that were still interested or active in conversations for Ben Simmons. The Kings weren't on that list. Now, I'm not believing for 1 second the Kings are no longer interested in Ben Simmons. What I believe is that conversations between the two teams have completely stalled because there's no reason to continue them. The 76ers still have their unrealistic asking price for Ben. And apparently, even with Ben reporting to Philadelphia, which I guess the 76ers didn't know about, according to reports, even then, 76ers are still looking to shop and trade Ben, which is the right move for them, except they still have their ridiculously high asking price that they're never going to get in a million years. And then there's the Kings on the other side of things, where Monty McNair is saying, DeAaron Fox is not available. Tyrese Halliburton is not available. We haven't heard for sure whether or not Davion Mitchell is available or not, but based off the way he's been playing in preseason, I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings say Davion Mitchell is not available either. It's Buddy Hield and it's Marvin Bagley and draft picks. Maybe Harrison Barnes works his way into that conversation, but maybe not. Like, Monty has no need to budge. A lot of teams have no need to budge. They're not going to give in to the ridiculous asking price of Philadelphia. The only team that's going to need to budge is the 76ers. Or, in this case, Ben Simmons might budge and say, you know what, I need this money. I'm going to go and make it work. But good freaking luck to Ben. If Ben goes back to Philadelphia, good freaking luck showing up to a 76ers home game. You think they're going to welcome him back with cheers and say, we're glad we worked this out? Hell no. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be throwing things at him, certainly going to be spitting at him. I mean, we know that Philadelphia 76ers crowd. I think Ben Simmons is aware of that too. That's why he doesn't want to play there anymore. I have no idea why he reported. I have no idea why he's going through COVID testing. Maybe it has something to do with money. I'm sure more information will come out later. But this entire saga is weird. And basically, I'm at the point with Ben Simmons where it's like, if it's not new information like that actually means something, if Ben's not playing for the 76ers or being traded, it's not worth talking about, not worth hearing about. So that's an update on the Ben Simmons situation. Now, I can't wait to talk about this Kings win over the Portland Trail Blazers and specifically the games for Davion Mitchell and Terrence Davis. Before we get to conversation about that game, I want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. In 2018, the fantasy sports experts at Sleeper realized that fantasy basketball was just straight up broken. Games were being won and lost based off of whose players had more scheduled games that week. It made no sense, required very little strategy. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each of their starters to count towards their team total score, ensuring an even number of games played between opponents. It basically is the normal fantasy football format, but coming to NBA. The days of losing because your opponent's players simply had more scheduled games to play than yours did, those days are over, as are the days of mindless daily busy work causing you to give up halfway through the season. No more of that garbage. Now it's at the beginning of the week, you select your starting lineup, you pick which game you want to count. So let's say, for example, I have DeAaron Fox, and let's say the Kings have 4 games in a week, which is a lot. Let's say 3. And the 3 games are against the Atlanta Hawks, against the Los Angeles Clippers, and against the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, all 3 of those games, DeAaron Fox has had success against those 3 teams. I really like how Fox plays typically when he plays against the Los Angeles Clippers. He always seems to play really well. So that's the game I picked to count towards DeAaron Fox. At the end of the week, whatever he gets in that game, those are the points that I get. Just like fantasy football, it's weekly instead of daily. Gets rid of that busy work. It's a lot of fun. So go and download Game Picks on the Sleeper app. Start a league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by our friends at DirecTV Stream. Let me know if this sounds familiar to you, because it's familiar to me. You got one device that lets you catch the game live. You have another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbors, best friends, log in for all the other good stuff. Well, I want to let you know that there's a way to get all that entertainment that you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together in one place. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings you live TV and on-demand favorites, brings them together like never before so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And I know what you're thinking. DirecTV, TV contracts. I don't want to do that. Not in this modern era of streaming. I'm a cord cutter. I don't want to do it. Look, I have not had a TV contract since high school. I've been cord cut since then, and I love my streaming services. But that's what DirecTV Stream is. It's a streaming service like every single other one, except it's better, and it does not have that contract attached to it. The only negative, really, of TV has been taken away with that contract. Get rid of the clutter, get rid of the confusion, get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device is required. Content varies by package. The Kings are 3-0 in preseason. Yeah, but Matt, it's preseason. It doesn't matter. Yes, I get it. Every single time I seem to put up something positive about what the Kings are doing in preseason, I get some yeah, but from somebody on social media, whether it's a Kings fan or not. Yeah, but DeAaron Fox is not playing against the best competition. Oh, the Kings defense is better. Yeah, but Damian Lillard didn't play. We know. We get the context. No one is coming on the Locked On Kings podcast and saying, man, this Kings team is 3-0 against 3 really good teams in Phoenix, LA, and Portland. This team is going to be undefeated. This team is going to be a top team in the Western Conference. This team is suddenly a top 10 defense. No, that's not the case. But what do you want from preseason? In these 4 games before the regular season starts, you want to see, first, consistent improvement. Second, you want to see an idea of, or you want to see the ideas of the offseason, a compilation of talent that you brought together, start to look like something, or you can see how this team can be successful with a little more work. You can see the foundation of what makes a team successful That's what you want to see in preseason. And that's what we've seen and then some for the Sacramento Kings. And yeah, they're 3-0 in preseason. Whoop-de-doo. I think the Kings, there's a couple years where the Kings have gone undefeated in preseason, and we know that come the regular season, they weren't any good. Okay, who cares? Nobody's talking about the 3-0 record. Nobody's talking about the final score of this Kings-Blazers game where the Kings won 107-93, which, by the way, it's the third straight. All three of these preseason games, the Kings have led by double digits at one point. That, to me, is more meaningful than a final score being 3-0. And again, yeah, but Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum didn't play in this game. The best players for most of these teams haven't been playing while the Kings' best players have. Asterisk with this game. I'll get to that in a second. I get that. But how many times have we seen this Kings team in the past, different versions of this Kings team over the last 15 years, struggle to play to their level? They play to the level of their competition. We've seen far too many times the Kings take on teams that they know they're better than, but they play to their level and they struggle and sometimes lose those games. God, we've seen it so many times I can't even count it. And every single time you want to pull your hair out, right? So now we're seeing a Kings team playing against three inferior rosters during the preseason and winning comfortably in all three games. That's exactly what you should want. What more can you ask for? There's no need to, but they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, the Kings were not at full strength in this game. They did not have Marvin Bagley, who's out with a foot injury, I believe, although Luke Walton said before the game that he's feeling good and he should be back. And, I saw some people making a big deal out of that and rolling their eyes. Oh, Marvin Bagley's hurt again. Whatever. Like, honestly, I'm to the point where if Marvin gets hurt during the regular season, like, it's just like, okay. All right. Like, that's, I read it and I shrugged. It's like, okay, Marvin Bagley's hurt again. All right. Nothing we haven't seen before. No big deal. And that's unfortunately what Marvin is to this team now. He went from being drafted to be like the second best player or maybe the best player on this Kings team, a number 2 overall pick that was supposed to be the Robin to Fox's Batman and help this Kings team all of a sudden make the playoffs and end that playoff drought. He's gone from that to, well, if he plays, he could help this team. But if he's out, all right, that's where he is. So I'm not overreacting too much to that, but it sounds like he's going to be good to go. Maybe he'll play in the final preseason game in Sacramento against the Lakers. I don't know, but it sounds like he'll be fine. Tyrese Halliburton didn't play in the game because of rest. Who else didn't play in this game? There were a couple others that did not play, notable players that did not play in this game. Buddy Hield didn't play in this game. That's another important player that was out. So the Kings themselves weren't at full strength. Still, they handled their business. Now, we got to see Davion Mitchell starting alongside DeAaron Fox. And Davion Mitchell is just, he's just fun, dude. He's just so much fun to watch. And it's not just on the defensive end. Now, we know what Davion can provide defensively. And once again, he did that tonight. There were a couple isolation possessions against him where he forced turnovers or shot clock violations or bad shots. We know on-ball defense, Davion Mitchell is incredible. He's incredible to watch. But all of a sudden, we're seeing what he can be on the offensive end of the floor. In tonight's game against Portland, finished with 20 points in 32 minutes. Now, I don't know if it's even close to fair to expect 20-point performances out of Davion. Maybe every once in a while, but that's probably about the peak of his offensive production that you're going to get at this point in time. Maybe he develops into something more down the road. But I will say, he shot 6 of 9 from three-point range in this game. He's 10 of 16 from three-point range in the preseason. 10 of 16. Remember, before his senior year or his last year with Baylor, Davion was not a good three-point shooter. And all of a sudden, his final year in Baylor, he shoots like 42, 43%? And we're talking about heading into the draft. Man, that year has to be an anomaly, right? He's not going to carry that over into the NBA. Well, here he is so far in preseason, and he's shooting 10 of 16 from three-point range. Now, I don't expect that to continue, but I will say, if Davion Mitchell can be that 40% three-point shooter right now, like right away, if he can be what he was in college from the three-point line, 40%, in addition to the defense that he provides, right away, he's a high-impact player. Right away, he needs major minutes. We talked about it on a recent podcast. I said that Davion Mitchell needs to have big minutes right away, especially if he's providing that floor spacing on the offensive end. Now, if you sprinkle in a little bit of playmaking into that pie, if you add a better, more consistent playmaking ability to Davion as an undersized point guard, like we're talking about the steal of the draft. We're potentially talking about the best player in the draft. And I've heard a lot of people say, like, if Davion Mitchell were 6'8", or if he were 6'7", he would have been a top 3 pick in this draft. Honestly, he doesn't have to be that tall. It doesn't matter that he's old by rookie standpoints. And I use air quotes there with old. If Davion Mitchell can shoot 40+% from 3-point range, be the on-ball defender that we've seen so far in literally every game that he's played for the Sacramento Kings, including Summer League, and in addition to that, develop to where by the end of the season, he has that playmaking ability that the Kings would like out of him, he's probably Rookie of the Year. If not, he's top 2, top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting, just like Tyrese Halliburton was the year before. And in addition to that, he's probably a starter on this Kings team. Like, I know we still need to see if that 3-guard lineup is going to work, but if Davion is this good and adds that playmaking to the game that he's portraying right now, how do you not start the guy? How do you not? You need that. So it's been phenomenally fun to watch Davion Mitchell play. I'm really enjoying that. Terrence Davis was fantastic in this game. Now, I should say he was fantastic in the first half. Second half, he quieted down a little bit. And we know that Terrence is a streaky shooter at best. When he comes in and when he's playing as well as he was playing to start this game, I mean, he was like 3 of 4 or 3 of 3 for his first 3 3-pointers or something like that. And he had, I think he finished with only 3 threes, but all of them were in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, 3 of 9 from 3-point range. So he cooled down significantly in the second half. But to start the game, he was red hot. Finishes with 17 points off the bench. If Terrence Davis is providing that kind of offensive spark off the bench, I mean, the Kings have an incredibly dynamic player in Davis. Incredibly dynamic. And you've heard me talk about it before here on Locked On Kings when the Kings acquired Davis last season. Davis is truly a cheap Buddy Hield replacement. It's really what he is. Now, I want to ask you, how comfortable would you be if Buddy Hield was gone today? Just gone. No longer part of the Kings roster, and Terrence Davis kind of took over his role. How confident are you that he could be the consistent presence, offensively especially, that Buddy Hield is? Defensively, I know that Terrence is going to provide more than Buddy Hield, and I think he's going to provide more mid-range and scoring around the basket. It's really that 3-point shooting and just that Buddy Hield floor spacing presence. I don't think there's a significant drop-off between Buddy Hield and Terrence Davis at all. I really don't. Now, I've talked about my desire for the Kings to trade Buddy Hield before. I'm not going to turn this into the Kings just need to get rid of Buddy Hield because we've seen him be effective, and I do believe that he can still be effective for this Kings team. But I'm saying if there's minutes available for Terrence Davis and he can provide this consistently off the bench, and you're going to hear I asked him about being less streaky and working on being more consistent. He's going to talk about that in just a second. If he can provide that, though, for the Kings on a nightly basis, man, just add it to the list of positive depth that this Kings team has. Speaking of positives, DeAaron Fox, not the best night for DeAaron, at least when it comes to scoring. He had only 8 points in 22 minutes, shot 2 of 10 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3-point range. That's a bummer. But he did finish with 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. By the way, the Kings forced 27 Portland turnovers and scored 28 points off those turnovers. There's the difference in the game right there. Kings had 15 steals in this one. DeAaron Fox had 3 of them. So he was, once again, like the Phoenix game, when he wasn't scoring, he was effective away from the ball or away from scoring the basketball in other ways. But what I want to talk about with DeAaron Fox is he went 4 of 4 from the free throw line in this game. He's a perfect 10 of 10 from the free throw line so far in preseason. Now, on one hand, I want DeAaron getting to the free throw line more than just 10 times in 3 games. Now, granted, he has not played starter minutes in these 3 games. He's played like low 20s. So maybe if he had played 30 plus minutes per game like we expect him to, maybe he would have significantly more free throw attempts. We don't know. But regardless, in the times that he's been to the line, he's a perfect 10 of 10. And we know free throw shooting has been one of the major weaknesses in DeAaron's game, something that he's actively been working on. So the fact that in preseason, he's perfect in the line, you can't, but that. It's a free throw is a free throw in preseason as it is during the regular season. Man is 10 of 10. You're going to hear Luke Walton talk about the importance of that here in just a second. Before that, though, also want to mention the Kings are, for the 3rd straight game, 3 straight preseason games, the Kings have held their opponents to under 30 points in 3 out of 4 quarters. Yeah, but this guy didn't play. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Defensively, the Kings have held their opponents to under 30 points in 3 out of 4 quarters in all 3 preseason games. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Before you hear from head coach Luke Walton and Terence Davis, I want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar has so many delicious flavors that you need to try. Flavors like coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, orange, cookies and cream, German chocolate. They also have a brand new, I think it's cookie dough bar. I mean, these bars are so good. They're covered in 100% chocolate. They're protein bars that taste like candy bars, and they're healthy for you. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy. What you need to do is go to built.com and get a mixed box. It'll send you a bunch of different flavors for you to try out. Then once you have your favorite flavors picked out, you go back to built.com and then you order a box specifically with the flavors that you want sent right to you. It's what my wife and I do. I have a Built Bar almost every single day. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Here's Sacramento Kings head coach Luke Walton following the Kings preseason win in Portland.
Yeah, I'd say overall, I'm happy with the effort we got again tonight from our guys. I thought defensively we were good, active hands. We had one bad quarter there in the second where they were getting too many easy looks, but I thought we played an overall pretty good game. Rebounding, they hurt us on the glass, which is again something we keep harping on, but we made up for it with some really good effort and deflections and steals on that end of the court.
Hey, Luke, we just talked to Terrence. I wanted to get your thoughts on his game. You've said many times before that you just got to stay ready because at some point your number is going to be called, and Terrence carved out a role for himself last season. Your thoughts on the energy and intensity that he brings on a nightly basis and how you can utilize that.
Yeah, he's been great. And honestly, it's what we've seen out of him in training camp, the last couple of weeks as well. And he's, that's how we want him playing. We want him being aggressive. We want him attacking the rim. When he's open, we want him shooting the ball. So I thought he had another solid game and really played exactly how we want him to play. He missed some good looks in the second half, but most of those are shots we want him taking.
Yeah, Luke, Davion, we're seeing the defensive impact he has, but on the offensive end, he seems to be awfully efficient and really good from the perimeter. Is that something you're seeing consistently behind the scenes at practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Davion, it's been great because, we knew what you never know what you're getting, but we thought we had a pretty good handle drafting him on what he'd be able to do for us defensively. And the amount of work he's put into understanding the offense and adjusting to the size of the NBA has been great, and it's been quick. So, he was really good offensively tonight. I think he got hit pretty good with a Nurkic screen early on there. He probably hasn't felt many screens like that before, but that's all part of that learning curve I was talking about before the game. The more he can play against different guys and feel and understand this league, the better it'll be for us in the long run. And he was good.
Luke, I believe he had 53 off the bench tonight. With the depth this team has, how important and how beneficial can this bench unit be to what you guys do this season?
Well, they should be big for us because, one, we want to play a defensive style and an offensive style. That guys should be getting tired. And when they get tired, they should have trust and confidence that the people coming in for them are going to get the job done as well. So, we'll play our bench. We'll count on our bench. And, it's definitely one of the strengths that we're looking to use going into the season.
Hi, Luke. 4 rebounds for DeAaron Fox there tonight as well. Is that an area of a game that you're looking for your guards to be proactive on the boards, proactive on the glass?
Yeah, we need it, and especially with DeAaron and Tyrese, who have some length, to come back in and get rebounds for us is important to us becoming a better defensive team. But it also really ignites our fast break game. So, if the guards can come in and rebound and then just take it themselves and push, it's a lot harder for the defense to get set and get into their spots. So, we talked to DeAaron a lot about that, and he's been good so far in the preseason with his rebounding.
Luke, speaking of DeAaron, I believe he's a perfect 10 of 10 from the free throw line so far in preseason. I know that's something that he's talked about working on and getting more consistent at. What does that do for his game when he's able to have that much success at the free throw line?
It was big because he's our best player at getting to the foul line. He's really tough to keep in front and not put hands on him, and he can get in there and attack the big. So, I think he finished top 10 last year in free throw attempts per game. So, if not, he was right around that. So the better he can shoot them, the better our team will have, a better chance we'll have of winning games.
Now let's hear from Terrence Davis. Hey, Terrence, we've seen when you get hot, when you get going, it can result in a lot of points really, really quickly. But sometimes that can be labeled as streakiness, a player like yourself in the NBA. How do you work on making that consistent throughout your appearance? How can you work on that outside of a game?
Well, that's something, this preseason, and this season, I've, been telling myself, I have to be more consistent. So these preseason games, I've been trying to, take that into initiative and just really, when I'm out there, just, going hard, bringing energy, just, putting the effort, in as well. So that's definitely something I would say, was a big focus coming in, year 3 of mine.
Hey, TD, nice game, man. I think you guys had 53 points off the bench tonight. I've kind of asked you this before, but I'll ask you again. How much of a strength can the bench be for this team, given the depth that you guys have?
I mean, I would say this, all good teams, pretty much have a nice, solid bench. So if the bench can come in and, pick up the pace, pick up energy, or just, feed off of what the first group is doing, that's always a win, man, honestly, my opinion. So I definitely feel like, this bench, regardless who it is, because, it's many players on this team that can, play this game. But definitely, that's definitely something, that's major for us.
Hi, Terrence. Another win, another preseason game, another win. How's morale going into the NBA season? This NBA preseason has been flawless for you so far.
I mean, it's been good. Like the energy and within the group itself is just amazing, man. Everyone is pulling for each other. Everyone worked extremely hard. I know you guys keep hearing it, but it's the facts, So, man, I'm just excited to continue the grind, continue to keep going, man, and bring this organization back to where it once was.
Terrence, we've heard and talked a lot about Davion Mitchell and his on-ball defense, but tonight, 6 of 9 from three-point range. I think he's 10 of 16 from three overall in the preseason. How much more dynamic does that make him when he has the defensive background, but he's able to space the floor like he's been doing?
The sky's the limit, man. You can't put no limit on him. He's an extremely hard worker, and he's getting out what he's putting in, honestly. So, shout out to Dave, man. He's gonna continue to get better because he works, and Kings fans gonna love him, honestly, if they don't already.
And now I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on this 3-0 Kings preseason so far. Your thoughts on the play of Terence Davis and Davion Mitchell, DeAaron Fox's free throws, the guys who didn't play. Are you a yeah, but guy? Or are you like me, looking at all the positives from this preseason and just feeling really, really good about where this Kings team is at for right now? Maybe not head over heels and over the moon, but cautiously optimistic maybe with how good this team is playing heading into the regular season. If that's you, let me know. You can reach me, mgeorge@sac, or rather Matt George Sports. My email changed, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. You can also tweet me at Matt George Sac. That's SAC on Twitter. And if you're watching on YouTube, you leave your comments in the comment section down below. Also, let me know what you think about the setup is finally done. Kinda, it's almost done. I have if you're a Lord of the Rings nerd like me, you'll appreciate that in the background. Plus, there's a big bare empty spot on my door that's going to have a Lord of the Rings type flag banner that is coming in very, very soon. So if you're a Lord of the Rings nerd, I hope you appreciate it. If you're not a Lord of the Rings nerd and you think I'm just a nerd, well, you know what? I am. I'm a sports nerd and a Lord of the Rings nerd. Welcome to my life. But if you want to leave your thoughts on what we've talked about here on the Locked On Kings podcast, really, really would appreciate it. Would love to engage in conversation with you. Tomorrow's Locked On Kings podcast, I plan on being joined by a couple friends of mine, D'Lo and KC, Damian Barling and Kenny Caraway from the D'Lo and KC radio show on ESPN 1320. I'm a frequent visitor of their show, so I thought I'd bring them both onto my show, and we're going to talk about Marvin Bagley and his current contract qualifying offer situation. A lot of interesting stuff going on with that and that dynamic that it adds into Marvin Bagley's trade value and what the Kings might decide to do with Marvin come the end of the season. So we'll discuss that and then some tomorrow. I hope you will join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.